So our story opens up with Magnus Vito Corleone being escorted to an island that, if I'm being completely honest, but in their defense, they did find what they were looking for, but only time will tell if that's a good thing. Meanwhile, on a peaceful dirt road in lands far away, we find a group of merchants resting up after a long journey. And what a great spot to choose to rest up at. It really is too bad that they didn't notice this group of unsavory fellows creeping up on them. Unfortunately for the bandits though, the merchants were fully prepared to reverse Uno these problems right back at them.
Hello there.
That's right, these weren't merchants at all. They were in fact the heroes of our story. After revealing themselves, Ash leads his men Diego and Clint into battle, making short work of the bandits in the process.
Nice.
Now it turns out that Zoot's a career criminal that Ash and him took down months ago, so this makes it really disturbing that he's back out in the world causing trouble once again. I mean, let's be honest, with his rap sheet, he should have been buried underneath the prison, not released for good behavior.
Arson, armed robbery, mayhem.
Wait a moment. What have you got in your mouth? Chewing gum on line, eh? I hope you brought enough for everybody.
I didn't know there was gonna be so many.
Boy, is he strict.
And now that the deed is done, they take career criminal Zoot back into custody and they return back to HQ to deliver their report. It turns out the corrupt politicians might have been directly responsible for Zoot's early release for good behavior. But Zoot's behind bars again, and that's all that matters, so the frustrated group heads to the local tavern to drink the night away, or so they thought. No time for frosty beverages right now. There's a riot that broke out in the Dover district and the ISF is needed. But unfortunately for everybody that's involved, it wasn't the ISF that arrived on scene first. Ash and him arrived just in time to watch the Crimson Guard massacre everyone. The Crimson Guard are a group of brutal soldiers that are sent out to clean up the more unsavory messes that the kingdom has to deal with. Led by Kane, they take great pride in their brutal ways. And after massacring everybody, including the ones that were surrendering, Kane assembles his men to address Ash. And to nobody's surprise, he's a bit of a dick. He reveals that Ash is the son of a traitor and can't even hide his disdain for the fact that Ash was put into a position of power. Storming off like the Nippo baby elitist that he is, he leaves Ash and him behind to clean up his mess.
What a dick!
The arrogant bastard does nothing but insult Ash the entire time, then has the nerve to put him in charge of handling the people in the church. But silver lining, at least this way they have a chance of having their day in court instead of being massacred. And their chances of avoiding a massacre just got slimmer. Some unexpected guests showed up, forcing Ash and them to intervene before they were able to reach the people in the church. Once the ghosts and goblins were dealt with, Ash and them arrive at the church to negotiate a surrender from Count Claymore. But unfortunately, Kane enjoys the sound of his own voice so much that he shows up to give his opinion on the subject. Pulling rank and taking Claymore into custody, he orders the slaughter of Claymore's men before taking him away. Or should I say attempting to take him away, because Ash and him had enough by this point. They saw Kane as a murderer and wanted to deal with him. Something Kane was completely okay with. He was ready to rid his country of the traitor's son anyways. But neither one of them would get what they want because Clive rushes in to break up the fight, ordering his men to stand down and sending Kane on his way. The following day, Ash met with Clive and a nobleman in his office alone. It was their hope they'd be able to figure out a way to deal with the Crimson Guard, considering that their leader's father was such an influential figure. The fact is Kane's father has so much political power that basically Kane can do whatever he wants and get away with it. And anyone that might take issue with it has a bad habit of disappearing. But Crowley has other plans. He intends on using Ash's little scuffle with Kane as a backstory in order to send Ash on a secret mission. Ash will be sent on a mission disguised as a punishment in order to find General Magnus, who's been MIA. He went to Gilbar's Island 3 months ago and nobody has any idea why he went there. Rumor is he was on a secret mission of his own under orders from Hells himself. It's Crowley's belief that he was sent there to find a power that would allow Hells to take over the country. This of course is all speculation. That's why he needs Ash to go and look into it. There's only one problem with that. To say Crowley is shady is kind of an understatement. He had the whole group's spider senses tingling really bad, so bad that even Clive was thinking about not allowing them to go on a mission. But Ash was not willing to hear any of it. He wanted to go on the mission. There were too many unknowns and not enough facts. They needed to know what was going on. So they gather up their gear and head out to find some answers. Along the way to port, they pass through some ruins that turn out to be haunted, and Diego shows just how manly he really is. Calm down, Diego, and let Ash do the talking. Turns out the ruins aren't really haunted, but whoever claimed they were sent out some golems to handle Ash and his friends. Too bad the sword's mightier than the stone, because they reduce all the golems to pebbles and a tiny little mage pops out to reveal that they were the voices they heard. A tiny, very rage-filled mage who was upset they destroyed all of our golems. And sorry kid, I'm pretty sure Diego didn't like getting his jaw rocked by a stone fist the size of his head, all puns intended. But here we are. Turns out the tiny mage was Magnus's daughter, and she didn't want to kill Ash and them, she just wanted to slow him down because she knew they were after her father. And she wasn't alone, as Huxley ran in despite her objections to help explain the situation. Huxley was a cleric of some type who served Eleni and her father. But after clarifying that they never believed that Magnus was a traitor, Eleni and Huxley decided to tag along in order to help aid finding her father. Meanwhile, in a deep dark dungeon somewhere, Kane was up to no good.
Who taught you how to punch? Maybe see if your daddy'll give you a roll of nickels. You better just Kill me.
Yeah, unfortunately, even with his father Hells watching from the background, Kane was unable to extract any information out of Claymore. I mean, he is a seasoned veteran after all, I'm not really too surprised. Plus, Kane did murder all of his men even after he surrendered peacefully, so I seriously doubt Claymore's looking to do him any favors.
Hit me again, Ike, and put some stank on it!
That's when Dolph enters the conversation, shows us Ash and friends were right not to trust the little slime ball, revealing to Hells and Kane that he already has a plant in Ash's group to keep tabs on them. Meanwhile, their journey to the port wasn't getting any easier as Ash and his group find themselves stuck between an explosion and a hard place. Their group's ability to walk right into traps is unmatched by all. Some bandits had blocked off their route and began blowing up the bridge they were standing on in order to cut off their retreat, leaving them with only one option.
Run.
The bandits were easy enough to deal with, but unfortunately Ash and them were outnumbered and the explosions were catching up fast. Luckily, a traveling mercenary had noticed the group in trouble and rained down arrows on the bandits from across the river.
What a woman!
With her help, it didn't take too long to cut down all the bandits so they could regroup safely on the other side of the bridge. The group took an instant liking to Kira, especially Diego, and they decided to allow her to join the group. Well, not everybody. Clint has trust issues, so he's not too crazy about the idea of allowing a random mercenary they know nothing about to join their party, but with Ash saying it was okay, he really had no choice but to fall in line. And the group makes camp for the night, only for Eleni to wake up to the majestic sounds of the Orc Arena. She ends up finding Ash playing down by the river and takes the opportunity to apologize for forcing him to bring her along. But all Ash wants is for her to prepare for the very possibility that she might find out that her father is indeed a traitor. Being the son of a traitor himself, he knows firsthand that it's not an easy life to live. But in her eyes, no matter what the evidence says, she knows her father is innocent. Magnus adopted her 15 years ago after her parents were murdered during the war. She was suffering from amnesia and had no memories of what happened beforehand. All she knew was this man took her in and raised her as his own daughter. Being a good man, a beloved father, and someone who truly loved and cared for his country, there was no way that Magnus could be a traitor. And yet, unfortunately, it's still a possibility. The man does work with Hells after all. And after all, Ash felt the exact same way about his father, and look what happened there. Little is known about the circumstances, but it is well known that Ash's father betrayed the Liberation Army during the rebellion. He too was a beloved father, he too loved his country and was loyal to it, and yet he still became a traitor. And because of that, Ash and his mother were targeted daily, so he knows firsthand what Eleni might face if things go south on this mission. The following day, the group arrived in the port city of Minato. But turns out finding a ship to take them to Gilbaris Island was not going to be so easy. Apparently pirates roam these waters, and unfortunately they're not the fun type. Nope, we couldn't get the let's have a party after a grand adventure type. No, we get the type of pirates that like to murder and just take all of our shit for no reason. The type that nobody in town was willing to deal with just for some strangers. Well, almost nobody. The bartender mentions a man on the edge of town that might be willing to help him out. His name was Grog Drinkwater, and his brother was murdered by pirates. So it's understandable when Ash and him catch up to him in his house that he's having more than a few in the privacy of his home. At first, Grog wanted nothing to do with the journey, but was willing to help them out, but only if they proved themselves first. Grog had already lost one crew and his brother to the pirates, and he wanted to make sure Ash and his friends were strong out to make the journey. So he sent them to a neighboring desert to deal with a bug problem that the townspeople were having. Oh, Grog, at least make it a challenge for him.
I'm doing my part. I'm doing my part.
The only good bug is a dead bug.
After returning, Grog was in a state of shock that not only did they complete the task, but they all survived it. And a deal is a deal, so after taking a night to sleep on it, he agrees to take them to Gilbaris Island, where he knows he'll have to face his own demons along the way. Not long after setting sail, they found themselves blocked off by the pirates who began boarding their ship, or at least attempting to. You guys are adorable. One by one they fell as the group crossed blades with the pirates on the high seas. Once the crew was dealt with, it didn't take long for Captain Hassan to become overwhelmed and be struck down right in front of Grog's eyes. Grog not being able to deliver the final blow would end up being a blessing, as it turns out that Hassan is his baby brother. That's the real reason Grog never wanted to return to the sea. He knew if he came back, Hassan's fate would be set. Hassan knew it too and was relieved that it ended this way. He had been living with the guilt of betraying Grog for so long, and he was ready for his suffering to end. But after revealing the truth, Ash felt horrible about involving Grog. But the way Grog saw it, Ash had nothing to feel bad about. His brother was at peace and the seas were safe once again. And that would have never have happened if he would have never met Ash and his friends, and because of that, he fully intends on remaining a member of their party. And with no objections to the idea, they break away from the pirate ship and complete their journey to Gilbaris Island. Unfortunately, only to arrive on the island to find that the villagers have been taken over by demonic statues. Now, the plan was to destroy the statues without killing any of the villagers, but somebody didn't get the memo. Yeah, she's working through some stuff. Luckily, they were able to destroy the rest of the statues and free the villagers. And hopefully, Eleni will be able to tame her bloodlust before the next battle. But sadly, after meeting with the village mayor, they did learn that it was Magnus who turned all the villagers. The statues were only put in place to keep him corrupted after he departed. This was proof that he was up to no good, but a traitor? The group still didn't want to believe it to be true, but there was only one way to find out, so they depart for the ruins to confront Magnus. But after a few days of travel, they stumble across a small party being chased down by demonic soldiers. These had to be the same demonic soldiers that the mayor told Ash and his friends about, and if they didn't do something fast, they were going to wipe out the small party. So after some quick thinking, they shut off the water to the canal, giving the small party an escape route. Very nice. This allowed Sarah, Amon, and Dolan to join the rest of the group, and together their combined forces wiped out the demons and the demon dogs. I'm not proud of doing what had to be done in order to reach them in time, but this is the world we live in, so moving on. Now that everybody is safe, it is revealed that Dolan and his party knows Eleni and Huxley, due to them serving underneath Magnus, but unlike the rest of the soldiers, they avoided being turned into demons and monsters. Monsters led by Magnus himself. This, of course, is a hard pill for Eleni to swallow, but hey, I still hold out hope that he's not a traitor. Granted, he has been corrupted by evil, but so far he hasn't plotted anything against the kingdom that we know about yet. So hey, there's still hope. Itty bitty little hope. But it's still there, because to their knowledge, they were sent there to find some ruins that would prove who the true ruler of their nation was. Unfortunately, Dolan and them were away when all the bad shit went down, so they don't have the finer details of what happened at the ruins. But they're determined to figure out what did happen there, so they pledged loyalty to Ash and they joined their party to head out to find Magnus. But before they would reach the ruins, they would have to cross over Laura's beach. And yeah, you might be wondering, what's the big deal about crossing over a beach? It might actually be a little bit pleasant. Yeah, this beach is more of a poison swamp that would make Miyazaki proud. And it's just full of monsters, goblins, and ghouls, and hell, even a few golems for good measure. But hey, at least we found banana! Later that evening, a jealous Diego finds Clint and Kira having a secret conversation away from the rest of the group. A late night rendezvous, you might say, but not in a good way. And after a short disagreement, Clint passes by Diego and returns back to camp, leaving him there alone with Kira. Suddenly, the jealousy was no longer on the top of his mind, and the bro in his heart kicked in. That's when Diego, despite it not being his place to tell her, informed her a little bit about Clint's past. His lover was murdered right in front of his eyes by a man who hated Clint, and Clint blames himself to this very day because of it. And it's because of that he may come off as a jerk, but really he's just overprotective. The following morning, they arrive at the ruins to find them very well guarded. Bastards even bought the High Ground DLC. This is going to be fun. But they manage to fight their way over the wall and into the tomb, where they find a non-possessed Magnus just standing around. Eleni, unable to contain herself, rushed to her father's side, only for her father to lose control and transform once again, teleporting to the top of the stairs and summoning some minions to deal with them. Magnus put up one hell of a fight, but after his minions were defeated, Ash and him delivered enough damage to him to where he was able to break free of the madness. The dummy reversey spell that the stone tablet casted on Magnus was finally broken. But before he could tell Ash who sent him to find the stone in the first place,
Shot through the heart! You bastard!
Seriously, Kane, don't you have some children hospitals to burn down? Maybe some kids to maim? Do you always have to show up at the worst possible time to make Ash's life more difficult? Please, don't get it twisted. I'm not trying to give you any ideas here. Clearly, you would actually do stuff like that. I'm just wondering why you just feel the need to always pop up at the wrong possible moment. And look, you brought a friend. Dolph arrives and reveals that he was working with Kane the entire time. How else were they going to bring the traitors Magnus and Eleni to justice? Knowing this not to be true, Ash attempts to intervene, but with them being outnumbered, they had no choice but to allow them to take them into custody. In the end, if he hadn't done that, they would have been slaughtered and labeled as traitors. All they could do is sit there and watch their friends and comrades be taken away. Taken away but not forgotten, because Ash had every intention of saving his friends later on that night, attempting a night rescue mission all by himself. But yeah, that was never going to happen with his crew. They don't mind being labeled traitors for the people that they care for, as long as you don't ask them to do it twice. Not wanting to waste any time, everybody set out to save their friends. Well, almost everybody. Apparently, the sellsword wasn't being paid enough to risk her life and be labeled a traitor, so she sneaks away in the dead of night. As for Ash and them, yeah, their luck continues to suck, because once they reach the dungeon, they are discovered by a large group of spiky good boys and girls. Oh boy, John's not going to like what we have to do next. Once all the puppers go the way of Old Yeller, Ash and them break into the dungeon and free their friends. All they had to do is make it back outside and they'd be home free.
You didn't think it was going to be that easy, did you?
It would seem falling into traps and being surrounded is a theme for this group. They find themselves staring down Hells, Dolph, and a small platoon intent on capturing them. They reveal that they have been working together not to bring the traitors to justice, but in fact to frame Magnus as a traitor. If they framed him for going after the tablet in order to get the power to overthrow the country, then they could claim the power for themselves. But now that Ash and them insisted on involving themselves, they have a better story they can run with. The noble and beloved hero Magnus learns of a traitor's son attempting to gain power to overthrow the country, only to fall to the hands of that treacherous bloodline while trying to stop him. The people would be on their side for bringing the person who murdered their hero to justice. They would have their cake and they'd be able to eat it too. Not only would they get the power they seeked, but they would have the perfect scapegoat. Everything couldn't have worked out better for them, and it wouldn't have been possible if Dolph's assistant didn't keep such close tabs on Ash and his friends. Kira is revealed to be the plant that Dolph mentioned to Kane and Magnus before, a fact that devastates her and the group. But now that all that's settled, all that's left to do is to take care of the traitors once and for all. You're adorable. Overconfidence will get you nowhere, Dolph. The folly is, he didn't know that Magnus still had some of the power left inside of him. Unfortunately, they ripped open time and space, and a good portion of Ash's group was sucked inside, leaving everybody else behind, cornered and outnumbered. But I'm sure everything will work out just fine. Yeah, they don't have their leader with them, they're down a hill or in a tank, and they are surrounded by the Crimson Guard. And yeah, there doesn't seem to be a clear exit, but I'm sure they'll figure something out. Meanwhile, Ash and them weren't faring any better, being teleported to some kind of hellscape. A hellscape that Magnus definitely wasn't going to return from. Try as she might, Sarah did all she could to save Magnus, but there was nothing more she could do. Realizing his end was near, he pleads to Ash one final time. Magnus may have been a hero in his own time, but he had so much blood on his hands that the stone brought the darkness in his heart to the surface. And even though he did try to repent later on in life by raising Eleni as his own, it ended up not being enough to wash his soul clean. With his final breath, he begs Ash to recover the stone so nobody could ever be corrupted by it again. Having no way to take him with them, they bury him where he took his last breath, only for some unexpected guests to show up and try to crash the funeral. After dealing with the hotheads, they are immediately confronted by a cloaked man. And after a slight disagreement with Grog, the cloaked man Zahar points them in the direction of the only town nearby. Yep, there's something really off with that guy, but with no time to worry about where his adventures may take him, the group decides to check out that town he pointed out. The town was made up of both futuristic and ancient buildings at the same time. It was kind of like witnessing two periods of history smashed together. Not in a bad way, just kind of odd. But luckily, no matter what period of time you're stuck in, there's a very good chance you're going to be able to find a frosty beer somewhere. And after having a few beers to calm down, they discovered they're frozen in time in some weird dimension. And they're not the only ones trapped in this time warp. Just about everybody that they meet there is not from this dimension. They're all stuck here too. And very few of them are from the same points of history. And there's no telling how long they were stuck there. This really seems like something the Lord of Time should be handling, but who knows when we're going to see one of them again. And unfortunately, Ash and him have no idea what they're going to do, but that's when Zohar shows up once again to join the conversation. After overhearing about the magic stone, he invites him back to his house where he pledges to join Ash and help stop Hells. Unfortunately for the group, he might know a way to get them all back. So they head out to perform a ritual that only a powerful sorcerer like Zohar could perform. It was his hope that if they performed a ritual at the gravesite where they buried Magnus, where they originally came to this dimension, that they would be able to return back to their own time. But unfortunately, the smell of blood was still in the air and the spirits show up once again.
Direct the day!
The little buggers couldn't possibly have worse timing. 3 of the towers immediately fall, forcing the group to surround the 4th one in hopes of holding off until the portal opens up. Luckily, they only needed 1 tower to open up the portal, which begs the question, did we really need all 4? Far be it for me to question a powerful sorcerer here, but I feel like if we would have focused on 1 tower for the ritual instead of 4, we would have been long gone before they even showed up. But no time to think about that right now. We are on a schedule, and it looks like the portal's opening up, so can't stop, won't stop. It's time to take a leap and see if it'll take them back home, and lucky for them, it did. Sort of. It did return them back home, just 3 years give or take in the future. And unfortunately, quite a bit has happened since they've been gone. Hell successfully framed Ash for Magnus's murder. He was then elected to be prime minister. He dismantled the council and eventually elected himself to be king, at which point in time he went power crazy and started imprisoning just about anybody that would oppose him. He even went as far as hiring criminals to capture and or kill anybody that would. I knew they should have killed that fucker the first time around. Bet you he still didn't bring enough gum for everybody. But unfortunately, Zoot has returned, and to make things worse, he's cornered a group of Ash's companions in the small town. But hey, at least they have the high ground, so it's not the worst place to make a last stand. Or at least that would have been the case if Ash's group didn't teleport right behind Zoot's forces. We're going to just pretend like they did that on purpose, though. After flanking Zoot and realizing he still hasn't brought enough gum for everybody, Ash ends up having them put down once and for all. After regrouping, they discovered that half their forces had been sent to the Imperial prison, and a rescue attempt would need to be made before they were executed. Or worse, but I'm sure Clint and them will know how to handle it if it comes to that.
Bend over and pick it up for me. Would you, lover?
No problem.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be just fine till they get there. Now, granted, they haven't had much luck with prison breaks in the past, but they have a good feeling about this one. Because for a change, they have the element of surprise. After all, Hells and them do think Ash and them are dead. But a rescue attempt wouldn't be enough. They would need an actual army to face off against Hells after everybody was freed, so they send Clive off to raise one. And the rest of them head out to save their friends, only taking long enough to stop by a neighboring town to take out possible reinforcements. They're blocking the path on the way to prison, so they gots to go. I mean, in all honesty, they probably could have just snuck around the town, but subtlety's never been this group's strong suit. Meanwhile, their enemies were having a little meeting with the nobles to discuss what they want to do with the stone. Apparently, the stone contained a bit of flame of judgment, the very same flame that nearly brought the world to the edge of destruction. Turns out the legendary Torah had used the royal ring to seal the flame inside the stone. Hells desperately wants this power, that way his bloodline will rule forever, and he's going to stop at nothing to obtain it, but unfortunately for him, Dolph seems to have other plans. After sending Zeno, his most trusted advisor, to keep an eye on Kira, he returns to the shadows to continue his work. But I'm sure it's nothing that Ash and him can't handle. I wonder what they're up to right now.
Oh, come on!
I gotta be honest here, Yappy, I'm not sure how much longer the big guy's gonna let this slide.
I'll kill them. I'll kill them all.
That's a bit of an overreaction. All they're doing is stopping a group of reinforcements from reaching the prison. Bonus points, it turns out to be Kane's men. Now if they're taken care of, they can storm the prison and only have to worry about the guards inside. Too bad they're unaware that they have an ally on the inside that's already helping the prisoners escape. Turns out Kira's developing feelings for Clint are overpowering her loyalty to Dolph, so she sets him and his cellmate Darius free. Kira had every intention of rejoining Clint on the escape, even providing him with weapons, but unfortunately Clint had no idea if he could trust her. So a heartbroken Kira leaves them to escape on their own. Fortunately, it didn't take them too long to find the rest of their companions so they could begin their escape. The backup is more than welcome considering they walk right into a labyrinth full of juggernauts.
Fuck.
But hey, look at the bright side. At least there's a lot of treasure chests around to make it worth your while.
Fuck.
Now, despite all the hassle, they were able to fight their way through the dungeon until they saw daybreak. Unfortunately, that daybreak just led them into a courtyard that was full of soldiers surrounded by walls with even more soldiers led by the warden. Yep, nobody said being temporary leader was going to be easy, Clint, but they do say certain things come in 3, so why don't you go ahead and let one more out for good measure.
Fuck.
But hey, look at the bright side. It turns out you're not the only unexpected guest that the warden has to deal with today. They had heard you guys were up for parole for bad behavior, so they stopped by to lend a hand. They cut down the elite guard and the warden, and once again, the whole team's back together again, baby.
Nice.
But this was just the beginning. Not long after the prison break, the rebellion got off to a strong start. The rebel army that Clive built retook the southern regions, giving them a strong foothold in order to retake the north. They were on a path to victory, but there was no need to get careless. They may have been gaining ground, but Hell still had the larger army, and any wrong move would be their last. Not to mention, he's still pursuing the royal ring, and if he gets that, there's nothing Ash and him can do to stop him. So they're going to have to divide and conquer. Ash's group would go meet an informant in hopes of finding out where the ring's location is, and Clive would continue to lead and build the rebel army. But before Clive could sneak away to continue his work, Ash stops him to have a heart-to-heart. He clearly is still feeling burdened by his father's past, and after everything Clive's done for him over the years, he can't help but to feel like he's holding him back. After all, there is an argument to be made that being seen with Ash is a bad thing. He is the son of a traitor who's been labeled a traitor himself for killing the nation's hero. But little did Ash know there might be a really good reason why he's always got Ash's back. Before they were able to jump down that rabbit hole, they're interrupted by Clint and Diego. You gentlemen have just the worst timing. Clive clearly had something he wanted to mention to Ash, but unfortunately that's going to have to wait now. Clive had very important work to do and it was time for him to depart. Fortunately though, it does seem like he was the lucky one of the group, because almost immediately after his departure, the entire town was surrounded by Kane's men. And I do mean all of Kane's men. He brought all of his commanders in hopes of squashing the rebellion once and for all. And on paper, it looks like he might actually succeed, but the one thing he didn't realize was, yeah, he may have an army, but unfortunately, that army's never been introduced to Grog, so, good luck.
This is where we hold them. This is where we fight. This is where they die. And these shields fall.
They ended up going on a killing spree, wiping out all Kane's forces, forcing him and his officers to retreat. Which means time to get getting while the getting's good. Would've want those guys to reinforce and come back for round 2 after all. But despite their efforts to get away without a trace, they run into Zeno in a neighboring forest. Which further proves that they just have the worst luck. Because this guy Zeno over here is just a puffy-chested gym bro who is just the worst type of person, not to mention a whole new bag of crazy. He also happens to be a powerful spellcaster that Trainer needs to harm himself, something he wastes no time improving by summoning a whole bunch of friends to join the party, before hitting us with the
Screw you guys. I'm going home. You dick. Later.
well, isn't that lovely? I guess it's up to Ash and him to entertain your friends then.
So, I'm Carl, that's also Carl. Mikey!
After sending the Bog Bros back to the gym from which they came, Zahar calms down enough to fill them in on who Zeno really is and what his motivations might be. Zeno was very powerful and had a lot of promise, but at the end of the day, he was a bit of a psychopath. Where Zahar wanted to prevent the Flames of Judgment from falling into the wrong hands, Zeno wanted to use the Flames of Judgment to end the world. And he wasn't about to allow Zahar to stand in his way, conjuring a mighty time spell that trapped Zahar in a time warp, the very same time warp that Ash then found him in. Then he proceeded to use his time magic to hop and skip across history to a time when the Flames of Judgment could be rekindled. Once they were rekindled, he would have no problem manipulating them weak-minded and power-hungry into triggering the end of the world. So it's probably best if Ash and him hurry along and prevent them from getting the royal ring as fast as possible. Arriving at a wealthy merchant's manor, we discovered why Diego wasn't crazy about meeting this particular contact. And of course, it's more daddy issues. You see, Diego's father is the type of father that actually wishes that his son had taken an arrow to the knee. Because he never wanted his son to be an adventurer, he wanted his son to fall in line and become the new ruler of this merchant empire he had built over the years. You see, Diego has his own reasons for not trusting his father on top of all of that, but at the end of the day, he is the only clue they have of finding the royal ring before the empire does, so Diego decides to play along. So a plan was hatched to meet up in an abandoned factory away from the prying eyes of the empire. That way they could get whatever they needed without Dolph and Zeno ever knowing. But if you've been paying attention to the video this far, you know that nothing is ever that easy and they eventually end up in a trap. Turns out Carlos was more than happy to sell out his country to help out the revolutionary army until he found out the empire paid better. Plus, this was the perfect opportunity for him to get Diego back. With Ash and him dead, if Diego wanted to survive, he would have to return home and inherit the family business. Of course, Diego refuses, but Zeno doesn't seem to take issue with it, deciding to burn him with the rest of the traitors.
Oh no, he didn't.
Carlos attempts to come to his son's aid, but ends up being struck down by Zeno's strong hand.
Nothing can stop the claw!
Very true, nothing can stop the claw, but it did interrupt the Ring of Fire spell long enough for them to escape. Not liking these odds, Zeno goes into a full tactical retreat as Diego rushes to his father's aid. Carlos does manage to survive Zeno's attack, and after a heart-to-heart with Diego, decides to help them out. Apparently, the royal ring's already in the hands of the Crimson Guard and is being prepared to be delivered by train to Hells himself. And after arriving on the train, they discovered that Kane didn't just have anybody transporting the ring, he had one of his commanders doing it, Dallas. Ash and him are forced to fight to the front of the train as fast as possible as Dallas orders each train car to be decoupled in hopes of leaving Ash and them behind. And as punishment for his dirty tactics, they raid his ramen stash before his defeat. Yeah, too bad they wouldn't get to enjoy the spoils of war for very long because Zeno shows up to crash the party, demanding a fair trade, the royal ring for Kira. Now Ash, he's a bro among bros. He couldn't exactly stand by and allow Clint's boo to be killed by Zeno, so he agrees to the trade, but they're keeping the ramen, otherwise no deal. Giving up a ring that may cause the end of the world is one thing, but we're not giving up one of our favorite treats. So an agreement was made and they head straight to Fort Dane to make the trade, the royal ring for Kira's life. Only to find upon arrival that, Zeno definitely would have made a great Bond villain in a previous life. Kira was shackled to a platform hanging high above a lava pit that would be lowered down slowly unless they handed over the royal ring. But after handing over the ring, they learned a very harsh lesson that they should have already known by this point. Do not trust Zeno. Of course he's going to take the opportunity to betray you, leave his monsters behind to slow you down, so you're forced to watch Kira die slowly as she's lowered into the lava. Now sure, Diego and Darius probably could have figured out how to fix the machine if they were given the opportunity, but we don't really have a lot of time, so yeah, we're just going to break everything and call it a day. Once they smash up the machine, they retrieve Kira and take a breather because yeah, that was a close one. But the breather would have to be short-lived because now that Kira was safe, they had to figure out what they were going to do about Dolph and Zeno. Not only do they have their alliance with Hells, but they have the power of the stone and the ability to wield it, making Ash and them's chances of success a bit on the low end. But it does turn out that hope wasn't lost. Zahara had gotten a good look at the ring's inscription and saw that it had coordinates that led to the Trog Mountains, which might be something worth looking into. With no better options, they head off by sea in hopes of saving everybody from the Empire.